This is David Lubofsky. Born and raised in Louisiana, he got into computers at an early age and realized he had to leave the South in order to pursue his dream of making great products for great people. He traveled from Louisiana to Chicago, to New York, to San Francisco, and eventually wound up in Connecticut, where he met David and formed the studio Y'all. Y'all quickly went from 2 to 22 in a matter of months. After a few years, he left in order to pursue solo consulting, writing, and his dream of making great products with great people and cultivating catalysts for creative projects. This is his story. Welcome to Low-Key Legends. I'm Britton Stepatic, and each week I have the opportunity to chat with someone in the creative industry, diving into their minds and mindset so that you can take away nuggets of wisdom and use in your business. So without further ado, let's get into it. David, so good to be chatting with you today. Really appreciate the time.
You as well, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I think that you have the one up on me with the llamas in the background versus the national parks and the sporadic art.
Yeah, no, the llamas are a good friend of mine. I'm very tall and sort of awkward, and at some point in my career, I guess people associated that with myself, like a sort of tall and odd fella. So I just randomly started getting gifts from team members, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control. And that was a housewarming gift from my old agency. So they just keep coming.
I think it's interesting the way that you kind of turn that into almost like your like little avatar in a way, where it's a just giant feature on your current site. It's part of your brand persona, if you will, of being extremely tall, being a Red Sox fan, and being from the South, which is just like an interesting culmination of features in general. And I was curious about your kind of background, and this will be for the listeners, especially if you haven't picked up a copy of the book. If you read David's book, The Search for Work Happiness, it's going to essentially feel like you know him right off the bat, because there's a ton of breakdown of your past, kind of where you came from to where you are now. But I'd love to dive in a little bit more into growing up in Louisiana, kind of what factors were at play and how you got to where you are in Connecticut as a kind of solopreneur who creates ideas and works with amazing people to make them happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in northern Louisiana. My father was from Worcester. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I'm so southern. But
Worcester?
Worcester.
Yeah,
So right
Worcester.
before they had me, his work had moved him down. Gulf Oil, I believe, had moved him down to Louisiana. So if any Boston fan will understand this completely, and probably other teams as well, but it doesn't matter where we had moved to. It was Boston only in the house, which kind of, I guess, solves the riddle of Southern guy with Boston influence. So it was just raised heavy around Boston sports. He, for the most part, wasn't a big part of my life, which is why anyone who reads the book will see. I look at my brother, who long-term military guy, is more of a father figure. So I grew up with just him and my mom, very small little family. What that did was allow them to sort of weed out lots of outside stuff and really just push with me morals, kindness, caring for each other. And so, the South South kind of sucks, truthfully, but it's really good for teaching you that. So like at an early age, I learned some very core fundamentals that I could apply to business later on, especially when I have teams, is the way I treat people. And then I obviously needed to make money growing up. And so first place I moved was Chicago, Illinois. And Britain is so stupid. It was like the middle of February when I decided to do that. So going from the South to mid-February, Chicago is kind of crazy. Um, but they weren't really nice there for the most part. And it's nothing against Chicago people, but my experience of where I landed and worked, it just wasn't a very kind situation. And so I got this really crazy contrast of how to treat people and seeing how like people react to being treated well. And then boom, I'm in this situation where that's not happening at all. And I see how that does the work there. And I see how people react to it. It wasn't good. So I think I was blessed early on to really learn that if you treat people right in the workplace, the work will show. It will be very clear in the results. So after sort of seeing the contrast in Chicago of just how not really treating people wonderful impacts the work negatively. I think I really had like my idea set in place. Like, this is how I'm going to lead. This is how I'm going to be a catalyst for really good work, is I'm going to uh, put teams of nice people around me and treat them properly and hope to get the best out of them. And over the course of my career, I feel like that's kind of been my trademark or my hallmark or whatever you want to call it. And so now I moved to New York area about 6 years ago, and then got the opportunity to lead some really big teams and then partner with a friend to start an agency. And in both of those situations, that was just sort of the driving force in everything I did, was trying to create happiness and great talent that was around me and watch the work just shine. And so feel like that worked really well. After a few years of running my own business, I definitely realized what I did and didn't like. And I don't think I'm really meant to run a 20, 30 person company. Uh, I like the people and I like treating people well, but trying to help people find happiness is one thing, but you have to find your own. And just, at that level, you're dealing with so much HR and client stuff. You have to see people upset, people at their worst, people at their best. There's just a lot for me, and it took me too far away from the work. So where I am today is about a year ago, I left the company, and I just wanted to put myself back squarely in the projects, doing the work all the time. And so that's where I am today, man. Just trying to build great work. Now I don't have a 20, 30 person team under me. So I have to, nothing great is built alone. So I still have to find the right people to partner with. But yeah, just sort of doing things on my own these days.
Yeah, it is a big shift from going to doing everything yourself and being kind of all the roles, and then learning to delegate. And, I'm not at the 20 person, 30 person size, but even just like delegating to 2 or 3, and then remembering that you need to not step on people's toes and
Absolutely.
actually let people do their job, because they probably could do it better than you sometimes, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
just let them truly shine is a big kind of growth step for anyone who is trying to navigate from solopreneur to a team. That's a crucial lesson. But I'm sure that we will jump back to the building of y'all with your partner. But I was just really curious. I'm sure it comes from your upbringing, but the theme of happiness and making people smiling and building great products that either leave a lasting smile or make someone happy, that's like a core central tenet to you, David. And I'm curious where that exactly came from, and when you discovered that about yourself, and how that kind of comes across in your work currently.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it was the mother and brother early on. Just when you're in a very small knit group, like 2, 3, 4 people in a family, you kind of depend on each other to keep each other happy. So I think I grew up kind of being a goofball. Like, I like making people smile, and I don't think that ever left me. And so I do not like to be unhappy. I'm sure that's everybody, but I'm always sort of innately looking for a way to lighten the situation or lighten the environment around me. And so just that constant like thirst for joy, I think is instilled in me at birth. And so I do try to do that in the work. I know you talked about the infusion of the llama into a lot of my branding, and it's intentional to disarm and make people sort of giggle. There's both a gratifying thing to that on a personal level of just sort of lightening people up a little and putting them in a good spot, but there's a powerful sales benefit to it too. Like if you can make a customer smile while they're using your product, they're more likely to adopt it, buy from you if you're actually selling something, and they're definitely more likely to listen to you. So like even in the book that I wrote, I have a bunch of goofy illustrations, really trying to make light of some bad situations in our industry. And so I just right up that same alley, I feel like people are more apt to listen to you and take in a rough subject or maybe even an opinion they don't agree with if you're trying to make them giggle or trying to put a smile on their face. Like there's no reason for us to be so serious about all this stuff. So I think it's just grounded there and always has been. But in whether it's a goofy llama in the footer trying to catch someone off guard, or in the book project I built with Brian and Jesper, the website, it's trying to make things like actual shapes smile, just to see if we can maybe catch the user off guard and make them giggle a little. So it's at the core of everything I do. Everyone's got to have their style or their way in design and in execution, and I think that's kind of mine. Is just really trying to make the customer smile and make myself smile at the same time.
You had mentioned that there's some things in the industry that you don't particularly care for. I know it's
Yeah.
in the book, and we have
Yeah.
very aligning thoughts on this, but I'll let you kind of take it away. What are the things that kind of really irk you in the creative industry and design industry particular?
Oh man, I hate to sound complaining like the list is long. There's a lot of beautiful things in the industry as well, but it's really just the actual treatment of humans and team members. So sometimes it's very intentional bad treatment. So it's like making people work 70, 80 hours a week while paying them a 40-hour week salary just to try to generate more revenue or new business for a company. So sometimes that's very intentional at the upper level of like they know they're not treating people right in doing so. And then there's some other ways where it's not intentional and it just happens from unaware management, maybe I would say is the core victim, is like not giving a voice to junior people, um, not really supporting things people do on the side, like side hobbies, things like that. So I think it's a mix of just really intentional bad human treatment and then just kind of oblivious treatment. But a lot of it stems at the management level, when you've got these people under you who everything you do impacts them. And if you drag them into some new business project that's not even part of their job at hour 65, you might think it's like take one for the team. These people have a family at home. These people probably are missing time with their kids. And so it's very like closed vision at the management level of immediate impact on the business and the work and revenue and just overall the mental health of the people working under this type of management just slowly gets like nicked away and what you're going to do is ultimately run people off and make them unhappy at the same time. And it's literally the opposite of what I believe, which is keep people wanting to work for you, keep them smiling. If someone comes into work happy because they got home, they had a great dinner, they got to spend time with their child, they didn't argue about how long they were at work, they get a good night's rest, they come to work the next day, the work is just going to be better. And when people are happier, they don't just work better, but they work harder for you. A 40-hour a week employee that you're forcing to work 60 hours is not happy, but a 40-hour-a-week employee that you treat well, that is happy, might still give you 60.
Mhm.
People, when people are happy, they want to work for you. And so that's really the core of that.
No, I fully agree. I did my design kind of education in Boston, and after that did some time at some advertising agencies, kind of freelancing around, and then ended up in a variety of different agencies around the city. But I kind of wanted to be Don Draper at the start of it because I
Yeah.
thought it
Yeah.
was like really sexy to be in the advertising world, to like be drinking like after work or during work. I thought it was like really cool to be working like 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
But that's just like the mindset of a stupid kid wanting to be a part of something, I think. And I think a lot of us tend to fall into a little bit of that trap where we are so excited about what we do and the fact that we get to use our creativity to make money and to have a career that we're okay with working 60, 70, 80 hours. And then eventually there's that kind of light bulb moment. And then we're just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Oh, yeah, it's addictive. Also, like the camaraderie you build with people when you're in that type of situation. I never like to compare things to war and soldiers, but in the same manner that those people band together at a much smaller level, you're working at 2 a.m. on a very important project when you haven't
Mhm.
left in 2 days, that you do build up a camaraderie. Some of the best friends I have in my life, I met my wife literally because she was the editorial director in a situation like that. We were round the clock with each other. So good can come out of it, and it's very addictive to me, is like having a beer at 11 p.m. while waiting on work to come to you, while you're hanging out with
Mhm.
people you've grown to love and trust. It's like it like sucks you in even deeper. It, that like Don Draper idea, it is sexy, and it is exciting. I'm not gonna lie, but it would just slowly will take your soul away, man.
Well, it's the fact that you realize that you're just not doing anything else. And I do think that there is this thing, like you had mentioned with soldiers in the trenches, this adversity that binds people together.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the kind of overcoming of challenges while working as a team is a huge part of
Yep.
agency culture, studio culture,
Yep.
and what really binds us. I think it's not as it's not as powerful unless you really work to build that in a remote model.
Mhm.
And I know that you can have it. And my team is all remote. And there are days that I definitely wake up and I'm like, man, I wish someone was like here in person to chat with so that we could just like hash out this idea or like banter about it, or even just like, having someone there just to see. But
It's hard.
it is difficult in that sense, but it also, I started Rogue to give people the freedom to be anywhere and to like, I think that autonomy and that equity and that freedom is kind of why most people went solo in the first place. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's probably even more valuable, to just respect their time and their hobbies and their passions. And yeah, I guess like it really is it's a double-edged sword. It's of which way you can go in the 21st century. And now that we have so many tools and communication platforms, and you can work on any time zone and still get a ton of shit done, that it depends on what type of model works best for you and your work style. And you should just be able to do that.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, and I'm not sure what all. I mean, sure, there's some industries that can't really pull it off the same, but it's definitely in our industry, it is the comfort that people never knew they would get is all they want now. I mean, when we had started y'all, it was probably a year before COVID happened, and we started bringing on a bunch of talent that we had already worked with in some of these agencies. We were almost like trying to rescue the good people
I
get them
love
out
that.
of the same thing we were trying to fix. And then, so that helped us a little when COVID happened because we already had relationships established with a lot of these people. And so some of them we were even hanging out with a lot anyways, out of
Mm,
work. And so that did help a little, but we quickly saw such a shift and everyone wants to be around each other to, oh wow, now I get to be around my family more
mm,
and do things I wanted to do more. So I would say, I don't know, a year after COVID, probably we had not been back to our office, obviously, since that had happened, and it was time to make a lease decision. And at that point, we had like 18 people, 19 people. So we basically put out some surveys asking people what their preference was, if they would like a per diem to have a WeWork in their area, or if they really wanted us to figure an office out, like just kind of trying to gauge people. And 100% of people wanted to stay put in their home working. And it's just
wow.
like such a shift from everyone just used to love, let's go to work and hang out and then do work while we're there. And so it definitely is a complete shift from things. And I don't think anyone saw it coming. We were very blessed to again have established relationships prior. And I think now if you're starting a company that is fully remote, you do got to find ways to have that, whether it's um, a retreat once a year or like a Zoom room that stays open all the time that you can join and be around them. And you know, if you still crave that on a personal level, maybe it's good to join some meetups or go to a WeWork or something like that. So we definitely have to find our new way of keeping ourselves sane during it all. But I personally love it. I have a baby on the way. I can't imagine making that hour plus trek to New York City to work
Mm.
every day. Now that I just can't even fathom that, even though it was basically yesterday.
And
Mhm.
I was curious, David, when did y'all start? Because you had mentioned that you were kind of trucking along through COVID and
Mhm.
after COVID. So can you walk me through that timeline of when you and your partner started, y'all?
Yeah, yeah. Early 2019, we were both working at the same place. Uh, it was pharmaceutical advertising, and we had the big cancer conference of the year coming. And my partner, who's also named David, was really big into helping build conference experiences. And so when we decided to leave the company we were at, I actually left first because he hadn't that big cancer conference upcoming. So I sort of went and started getting some groundwork done. And about 2 weeks or 2 months later, and which was April of 2019, he left, and we got like a little WeWork and quickly started growing. So that was April, and then what, March? So 10, 11 months later, COVID happened.
Mm,
When COVID happened, we were at like 4 or 5 at that point, and we had just upgraded our WeWork to like an 8-person spot, which we never even went in the whole lease period because of the funny timing. And the not nice people, anyone listening, not nice people from WeWork that would not even give us a penny towards kind of, you know, what had happened. We literally, a year lease we paid and never set foot in that 8-person spot. And so, yeah, so, you know, we had already established a little working order, and then that sort of happened. So, the next hiring decisions we started making weren't location specific. We just sort of went all in on the work with who you can, where you can. Got connected with Brian James, who lives in Germany, and then Kelly Milligan, who lives in New Zealand. And it sort of opened our eyes to like, not only do we have the opportunity now to pull talent from around the US, but if we want to navigate, you know, the weird financials of international work and the weird timing of international work, we can work with some like unbelievable talent everywhere. And so we kind of just like quickly went all in on that and
mm.
hired all our full timers within the US, but we began establishing relationships with talent like them. And that just became quick working order for us. And so I would say 6, 7 months into COVID, we landed a pretty massive contract that allowed us to grow from, I don't know, 5 to 22 or 23 within a matter of like a month, 2 months. So by the start of 2021, we were 22, 23 deep, and it happened really fast. But it allowed us, like, it allowed us to really treat people in a more unique way versus if you have like an office, you want it to look the same. You want it to, you have desks and computers and all this stuff. So what this allowed us to do is just hire someone and be like, what kind of system do you want? Do you want a laptop versus a computer? Do you need a desk in your office? And so instead of investing in all these like repetitive cookie cutted uh like roll up initiation and orientation for people, we just made everybody's situation different. And it was really nice. It allowed us to grow in a really fun way. And so yeah, man, that's kind of the timeline. We went for a few more years before I sold my half of the company, but yeah, that's sort of how it happened, man. It was right before COVID.
I am curious about your kind of mindset or kind of what you had to do to grow internally to go from who you were as a leader of 4 to a leader of 22 in a very short amount of time. What the hell did you do to be able to tackle that type of shift?
I was very blessed that my partner that I started the business with had ran teams of that size before. And I think I probably just leaned on that a lot. I had never managed more than like 5 or 6 people at a time. So a lot of mistakes, a lot of guessing. But man, we just started reaching out to a lot of people we knew because that makes it easier. And so I would say 75% of the staff that we hired going from 4 to 22, 23, we had already worked with, whether it was just on a team with or had managed directly before. And so I do think that it wasn't a really big jump for us there. I definitely think the problems were more on the management side of it, the administration side of it. Like the amount of salary you're out of nowhere paying is so insane. How do you make sure enough money's coming in from the client to put food on people's tables? And um, I think that was a bigger thing. HR was probably Britain, probably the only big shift for us is you have that many people, someone's going to have a bad day every day.
Mm,
Like it's just a numbers thing. We had this vision initially of we'll never hire an HR person because we're just going to treat people epic. But that is so like blind and not thoughtful of us at the early levels. Like people need an HR person to talk, but to kind of handle stuff. So made a really good HR decision. And then just sort of learned as we went. We did our very best to involve people in our decisions, be very transparent with everybody, because we needed to know if we were doing things right or wrong.
mm,
And when I say transparent, I mean stuff that would make CEOs freak out. Like if we had a new business opportunity, we would get the whole entire company on a Zoom and talk about, do we want to work for this client?
mm-hmm,
And so it wasn't, that's the polar opposite of how most advertising agencies, at least probably most companies, but it's always made at the top, and the work that comes down the pipe is what comes down the pipe. And we did not take that approach. And we were trying to obviously be nice to people, but a lot of it's because we just didn't know what we were learning as we go. It's like we don't want to, it's a good thing, it's growing fast. We don't want to take on work that people are upset about, and all of a sudden the fact that nobody's leaving and everybody's happy shifts really quickly to people wanting to leave and not happy because you're just handing them any project that you can take in to have revenue. So I think that was like the big thing, is just really being open and transparent with everybody as we grew really fast. And um, everybody says you shouldn't call work people family. I've heard it over and over. You shouldn't call work people family. There should be a difference. That is not how we ran things. We did our very best to become best friends with every single person that came through the door. And that's not scalable at 40 or 50 or 60 probably, but it was at 22. And, you end up not making friends with everybody at that number. You do your best and treat people right. But yeah, man, I think we just made a lot of mistakes. And if you're treating people right and they see you're really trying to do right by them, the mistakes are fine. They tell you about them, you sort of move forward. So uh, I don't think we got it right a lot, but I think we kind of laid a very kind foundation where it was okay that we weren't.
Yeah.
Everyone knew we were learning as we go. We didn't lie to anybody. Um, Anytime we tried to hire someone, interviewed them, we were just very open, like still learning to fly the plane. As we're flying the plane, do you want to get on the plane? And so, yeah, man, lots of bumps. And again, I don't think I was very good at that level of management. It ultimately didn't feel like I was. People weren't getting the best me. So after a few years of it, I left. So I clearly never, anyone that's listening, I didn't figure it out. I, I figured out how to like treat people and leave a good legacy there, I guess, of how I acted and what I tried to do for people. But I still don't know how to run a company. I don't think at that level it was really crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's tough. Some people are meant to be leaders of many. Some people are meant to be leaders of few, and I think I'm meant to be leader of few.
Do you think that the distinction there is that you want to be closer and have a smaller team to kind of like really, really connect deep?
Yeah, I'm a people guy, and not in a generic way. Like I just want to be friends with everybody, and if someone's having a bad day, it ruins my day. I don't separate that stuff as well. If people aren't feeling the work, I instantly am not feeling the work, and so it's hard to maintain that at that size. And I just like doing the work, and I like being involved in the work. And you hire creative directors. It's their job to start coming up with the ideas and pushing forward the company's vision, not yours. You're a partner in this. That I don't want nothing to do with that. I want to be involved in the ideas. I don't want to see a project launched and not feel good about it and not really have the position to say anything. Which in that world I didn't really. And it's not that the team wasn't doing good work. It's just I didn't feel like I could say stuff, and even though they were very open, I didn't feel like I could influence the work a lot at that level. And uh, now I feel much better because I'm very involved in the ideas. I'm very involved in the execution, and then I'm very involved in promoting it afterwards. And I think at the partner level, that's other people's jobs. Stay in your lane a little, and I had to pull myself back down to that more.
Yeah, it's this interesting thing where like there's a huge difference in the type of person that wants to be the leader of many. It's like the person who wants to create like these tight-knit systems that carry everything like very cleanly through.
Yeah.
And then the very hands-on type of leader in which you want to kind of contribute on every level. And there is a part of you that's in every aspect of the work, from the initial concept down to the kind of grunt work into the promotional aspect. And I'm definitely that way too. Like I know that about myself, and maybe that's why we haven't been able to grow past me and some core team members. But
I see the way you promote, man. You're pounding the pavement, and I love it. But sure, that will impact the ability to like scale upwards. Absolutely will. I have no problem saying that, but that's not always a bad thing. I mean, the work y'all do is great, and the promotions are solid, but that does take away from just like expansion. You got to be focused on something.
Yeah, it maybe it's like being like a architect versus like a gardener in a way. I don't know if that's a great comparison, but
I actually think it is. Yeah,
art,
no, man. I look, as long as the work is coming out the other end in a way you feel good about and the way you feel proud about. And I think that was one of my struggles at y'all, was the work was coming out good, but I wasn't as I didn't have this like sense of pride for it as much because it's like, well, I didn't even really know that project was happening. It's
Mm,
good job, guys. It's beautiful. It's weird for me to share it out like I had anything to do with it. Very proud of the team. Every day I was proud of the team, but I wasn't always proud of the work the team was doing because I had literally nothing to do with it except writing a paycheck, and that was sort
mm.
of an odd feeling for me. I didn't really like that very much.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be very strange, kind of not knowing everything that's happening in the business that you helped to create with your heart, blood, sweat, tears,
Yeah,
exhaustion.
I'm the social promotion guy, and I have been for many, many years. I ran our social account for a while until we hired someone that or had a copywriter sort of split duties to do it. So it was weird because I'm the one doing a bunch of the online speaking and promoting, but it wasn't really my work to even be talking about
Mm.
in the first place. It was sort of unique. So I definitely that was the number one goal when I left the company was take a little time off and then just dive headfirst into being involved in everything that I do. So it's definitely a big shift.
Definitely a big shift. And on that note, David, was I guess it's like the problem of every small business, solopreneur, freelancer is the consistency in work. And I know a lot of people are relying off of referrals. And Rogue is an interesting thing where we just don't get referrals from people, maybe because our work is so particular to a
Yeah,
type of like CEO or founder that needs this aspirational brand transformation. And mainly they come to us because they want to feel a certain way instead
yeah,
of hit some metric. But do you have any thoughts on like consistency in getting work and how to leverage social? Maybe you can just speak from your personal experience having grown y'all and kind of continuing what you're doing now.
yeah. At least for me, LinkedIn changed my life and
Mm,
still does to this day. Like I would say until we got that large account, just by previous work at y'all, every work we had gotten was from LinkedIn. It's not always because we're like, hey, buy our product,
mm,
LinkedIn, but we share things out, and somebody we hadn't seen in a while that we worked with at an old agency saw it and was like, "Oh wow, y'all started an agency. I have a project," and it sort
mm,
of rolled into stuff. So the number one thing is just getting it out there and getting seen, so that people from your past and people that know people from your past know what you're doing. And so I think that like started a pretty big flood for us there. And then sort of the same when I went out on my own, I made sure to reach out to a few former friends and former coworkers that were running companies and just kind of put my name in the hat for
mm,
any type of recurring work. And for me personally, I divided my time in half. So like half my time goes to some of the like recurring, almost lending a hand to stuff I can't promote or claim. Just like that's been key for me for consistent work is finding some revenues that it's not that I'm not proud of, but maybe there's rules with NDAs or certain things, but it's like
mhm.
half of my time goes to stuff that pays well, that pays the bills, whether I can promote it or not. And another half of my time's carved out to, so I was like, okay, I got to slowly build my own brand. It's me and another person's brand has been y'all for so long that I was using the business email to write personal emails. It was everything was that.
Mhm.
Now my clothing is my own logo. All my clothing was y'all's. So I definitely had to slowly build my own brand up and then just constantly post everywhere that I can. Anything that I designed, anything that I worked on, and then mix that in with the book and just general thinking for people or general like how I feel about the state of the industry, just like multiple revenue or multiple avenues of just getting my name to come through people's feed. And
Mhm.
then as people start seeing my stuff online, they're also seeing the products that I launch. And so as I would launch something, like I launched my personal portfolio, I got a little ESPN contract randomly from it. But it's just someone seeing it win an FWA and then or an awards side of the day, and then they just start writing and emailing, and it's just sort of organically happened. So uh, that to me is the big thing, man. I know a lot of people don't get too much into the whole awards thing.
Mm,
But the exposure that those things bring is just pretty insane. And so I would say every time a site that I've launched over the last year has won an award or even been like a nominee for an award, I got
mm-hmm.
a piece of work from it. And it's not, sometimes it's like a single page site, sometimes it's something bigger. So it's really just getting the things we're doing out there. It's a little different for you and what you're doing because y'all do very specialized work. I've You always hear the phrase "a jack of all trades is a master of none." I think I'm okay with that and I own it. But I put myself out there to work on whatever. I've been across a lot of industries my whole life, and so I do have a project where I just write on the project. I
Mm-hmm.
do a little UX, a little design, a little development. So just sort of casting that wide net for me has allowed me to create some consistency in the work that I have coming in. So I can see how if the more specialized you are, the more like focused on one discipline, it could probably be a little bit trickier. But I mean, my recommendation for anyone would just be get yourself out there heavy. Um, and people see your work and your work's solid and they see you putting out things into the world that are good. I think good things come, man. And
Yeah.
well, last thing I would say there is get involved in some for good projects. And so I always make sure, even if I'm making it up from scratch, I'm actually working on one with Brian James now that we sort of made up from
Oh,
scratch.
nice.
And I'll just call it a for good project. I don't want to say too much about it, but when you're putting out things that people clearly see weren't money grabs, aren't client work. Like people see you're trying to use your work for good. I do think that helps create sort of this good feeling in the public about what you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
not doing it to get work, but work does come from doing that.
I think that your approach is very organic and natural too, because you're saying
Mhm.
things that seem very authentic and clear and coming from your direct kind of persona as David and
Yeah,
putting that out. And then you're making work that ultimately is hyper focused to who you are as a person. So
absolutely.
translating that into the world, they get a clear sense of who you are, what you're interested in, what you do. You make great products for great people, but it all has a certain element of like personality, making people smile,
Mhm.
happiness involved. And that's so easy to connect with. So I guess my recommendation would be if you're gonna like promote things, don't jump on the trend bandwagon. Make work that is clearly hyper you. So whatever those interests are, and put that into the world, even if it's a passion project that you don't think is going to do anything, most likely it's going to connect with someone for some reason because there's enough people in this world that you're going to connect on some level if you just put it out because you like it.
Absolutely, man. It'll blow up in your face if you try to not be authentic in especially as a solopreneur. Because if people decide to work with you and you're not what that came across to them, it's just ultimately going to blow up in your face. And so uh, I have lots of language on my website to make it very clear to somebody by the time they click a contact button. It is very clear. I am a kind person. I'm not some jerk, and I don't really want a jerk writing me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work with nice people, and if you try to infuse that into your branding and not work with nice people, but whatever your authentic position is, if you
Yeah.
really infuse that into your branding, like that to me is the peak of good
Mhm.
branding. And I'm not even a branding person, but I'm very aware of what feels good to me and that's real and authentic. And so if somebody's not really feeling it, I don't want to work with them anyways, because it's not going to be a good fit.
Yeah. That's really the thing, is how to get the best people to contact you who would be a good fit. And I think that using social media to connect with people,
Hmm.
winning those awards and just putting out work that is truly authentic,
Hmm.
and that really does narrow in the market of people that are going to be, one, seeing your work, two, reaching out. That's the big one, the reaching out. You'll always get, like, I'm assuming you do too, like the junk mail and the really not specific, saw this thing, can you do this thing for me for $400 emails, but like, you just kindly say like no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those will always come.
Yeah. But the thing is, you get past those and then you get the ones that are like, I am so excited. I want to work with only you. When can we make this happen?
Yeah.
And take my money. And that's like the thing. It's like, if you do the job of kind of being true to yourself, then you're going to attract those people that want to work with you. And it'll be so easy to close that sale because they're already chomping at the bit. I mean, that makes it sound like a dog and it's all about business, but it's about connection and like a true relationship.
Yeah, there's still a sales component too. I mean, you have to take in income or go find a 9 to 5 job somewhere if
Mhm.
it doesn't work out. So you still have to find a way to infuse a little sales into it just without being very salesy. And I
Yeah.
think that's the catch. And it authentic could have been nice and warm and fuzzy, but not work out for me. And I just would have went back to work at an agency and tried again, and then
Mhm.
probably saved up money and tried to go solo again. It's
Mhm.
just keep following the light that you're driven to, but you still have to make money. You still have to you bring in the work. And so I've been very blessed that the things I've sort of put in place has brought some really good clients and really nice people my way. And it's for the most part filtered out me even getting requests from people who aren't that way.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm happy that that is the way that it works most of the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we get most of our inquiries from either people finding us on awards and or Dribble.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
and I think most of the inquiries from Dribble they tend to be small, but then there are some like big hits.
Awesome.
And we've worked with like agencies, like creative agencies as well, like Animus Studios and Animation Studio.
Awesome.
And we get a lot of people that are just like interested in our like jams of the week, just because well,
I love it.
I say we, but it's a lot of me recently, just because the team is working on other things, but I try to
That's
get
what
one
I
out.
mean though about getting out there. It doesn't always have to be groundbreaking LinkedIn perspective, and it doesn't always have to be about the work. It's just like you get people to start following you by any means necessary and engage with them by any means necessary, and you're doing it with that. I mean, who doesn't love some new music coming their way
Mhm.
all the time? And so, but that's clearly an authentic side to you guys. It doesn't feel like, hey, let's just put out some top 50 hits that come
Mhm.
along and drive people in. It's like, oh, same thing with the llama and the language on my website. You're making it very clear what working with you is like. Music is a big part of your life.
Mhm.
So it's good to tell that story by any means necessary, and you're also providing value at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just ties back to kind of, if you need some idea to put into the world and start trying to attract the audience, look no further than what you like and what you spend the most time on.
Absolutely, absolutely, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, keep those up.
And I think it really does kind of come back to what you were saying about like, you were putting things out and your network responded. And I mean, as if your network is working for you, then that's like an incredible thing. I think it's really hard when you're 22 and out of school, and then you're just like, oh, let's start a thing, because you're going to just be cold emailing, hustling on the internet, and it's going to be exponentially harder. And I can speak from personal experience because I like did a year and a half out of school and then just like freelanced,
Yeah.
and going from consistent income to zero income, and then having that hit really hard with the reality setting in, and then doing everything and anything to get work. It's definitely way harder. So if you are thinking, anyone out there, about starting an agency, connect with people authentically, and more things will come of it through that than you think possible.
I can't even imagine trying to start an agency without a lot of connections and a lot of people just from my work past and David's work past supporting us. Like our very first, like, hey, we're starting a company post. God, there's hundreds of comments on it from just people we've worked with in our past, just sort of throwing their support and kind of helping light a fire under something that was empty. I can't imagine doing that with no past coworkers and no past connections. So yeah, no, I would double down on that. Go to every meetup you can. Try to cut your rates and get in a few agencies and make some connections. Like do anything you can. We are useless without our networks. I believe I just still to this day can't imagine. I think I would fall flat on my face in freelance if it wasn't for just like the support people automatically give you from your past that you've worked with or treated well or ran across. Like you need that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the feeling of knowing that you're never alone, that they have your back, that you
Yeah,
can reach
absolutely.
out to them, and maybe they don't have a project now, but there's probably something in the future, or at least something coming down the road, so that
Yeah.
you don't feel stressed out and worried all the time.
Dude, it makes me think of, what, yesterday, 2 days ago, uh, Jesper Lamberg mentioned he's going out on his own, and just
Mhm.
watching the flood of people sharing, reposting, like helping
Mhm.
get his name out there. I just sat a lot of yesterday just looking at it like that is just special. Just like a extraordinarily nice human, insane work.
Mhm.
And when you combine those two things together, like everybody wants to promote that.
No, you're so right. And I commented,
I saw yours.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I would always support like anyone in the community if they were needed just like a repost or any kind of simple way to help.
yeah,
Because I think we all want the success of the people that we admire, and we just want to push them forward and don't want anything bad to happen. I think
absolutely. Yeah. Well said.
recently recently there's been a lot due to just kind of like a stagnation with design economy, probably based on a lot of layoffs in the tech industry in general, but it's definitely been really noticeable recently with Unfold and now Alpaca and other
Yeah.
guys, where we don't want to see that happen, even if you have no connection to that individual besides just social media. Just feel for them and want them to succeed.
Yeah. So many things change and impact plans of a business. So, like, for example, there are developers, like no code platforms,
Hmm.
just general accessibility for people to get their hands on decent dev work. I'm sure it's hard to run a dev shop in that situation. And I'm sure a lot of industries will sort of fall victim to this. Things like AI get a little more solid for professional delivery. The industry evolves and you kind of have to navigate around it. And sometimes it's changing the way you do business or the way you do service. And sometimes, like in that case, it's just sort of going back out on your own and trying to retool and maybe trying it again further down the road.
I think the thing that I've I guess, learned, I guess, from messing up a lot. is-
Best way.
Yeah, it's the best way, is that your failures define your future successes. And maybe that
Absolutely.
needs more elaboration, where the fact that you're making mistakes, you're learning from them,
Hmm.
and you're giving yourself a sense of, essentially, like a new piece of armor that defends you from that scenario in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're
Yeah.
suiting up against that by just learning from the experience of our past. So I do believe that we have to learn from our failures because they're the greatest teachers, and it may freaking hurt on on the fall down, but just getting up is the ultimate success.
Yeah. There's no greater feeling than pulling yourself up from the bottom, man.
Yeah, for sure. The underdog story is the best.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to jump into anything that you're doing currently?
So, I'd launched the portfolio and then turned the book, worked with Brian James and Jesper to turn the book into a really fun website. And then, kind of when you're working with insane talent, you sort of get bit by wanting to do it again. And
Mm,
so I know I mentioned Brian and I sort of made up a for good project, and then had some cool ESPN work come in. And so, yeah, man, it's just I feel like once I got involved with some people at that level, it really drove me to want to be on that level. And
mm,
so, I'd recommend this to anyone listening. I know everyone says never stop learning, and it feels very generic, but I'm about to turn 43, and I feel like I'm starting over with that of just like everybody that I work with is better than me
mm,
at their specific trade. And so, like the book site, for example, it's like almost everything in there makes no sense to me how it was developed. And
mm,
so, that like put a new fire under me to like learn this new level of things like GSAP and just JavaScript taken to a whole new level. And then watching what Brian was doing with some Rive animations. It's just like, oh wow, there's this new tool. It's not Lottie anymore. It's driven me to try to learn more about that. So I feel like while I'm balancing some really cool projects, uh, I've really been pushed by the talent around me to start really leveling myself up again. It's almost feel like I'm an intern working with those people sometimes, and so that is a big part of what I'm doing now. I'm like getting involved in some awards master classes, even though I don't know, 5, 10 years ago would have thought I was done taking stuff like that. I'm like sort of starting over, and it's all because the talent I've put myself around and the people I've been working with. So yeah, man, it's funny. I went on my own. I thought I would just like take what I had learned in the past and I would be building stuff, but I'm actually like funneled myself into a new line of education that is
mm,
hopefully going to just make the work that I do better, because I don't always get to work with insane talent like that. And to half of my projects, I have to take from start to finish myself, and so it's how do I translate some of those mind-bending things that I get to build with really great talent, and how can I work those into what I do on my own? And, even just like small. Uh, Brian is very specifically really good at taking a logo and finding ways to use pieces of that through everything, through UI,
mhm,
shapes of containers. And it's just a way I've never thought of designing. I like open up a blank canvas and I just sort of get in my zone, and I do something that's clean and nice, and just that is to me a very specific thing of like, oh, learning over again how to do
mhm,
UI and how to infuse branding throughout a piece that I'm designing. And so yeah, man, I just feel it's we we sort of go through our careers and we think we know which way they're going to go and sort of pivot, but you have to kind of wing it as you go and look for opportunities where there are. And right now, a lot of mine is just trying to level up to what you guys are uh, like you, people like that are just like producing it. Like you load the browser, everything is beautiful and elegant. So I feel like I'm in the middle of a resurgence in my career, trying to build only stuff like that.
I love that. I think it is a like a truly growth mindset, knowing that you're never truly at the top because there's always some either
Yeah.
like hotshot young kid who comes in and crushes it, or like just like someone who's just training a little bit harder. And I know that I have my kind of people that I look up to. Is there anyone specific that you look up to? Is it just Brian and some other guys too, or anyone that you want to name drop?
Uh, Brian probably introduced me to all of them. Kelly Milligan is another one that I would probably say that I really look up to, and just always has built insane web products, but out of nowhere just sort of shifted his career into
Hmm.
doing these beautiful interactive installments and like basically painting art with code. And
Wow.
it is trying to do that myself now. I'm not necessarily jumping completely the medium, but just like, you know what, I'm taking on a new challenge. I'm
Hmm.
gonna sort of evolve my talents and my skill to take things to the next level. Like we all can open up a site like Awards and look at things and be like, oh wow, that's awesome. I'd love to build that. I'd love to build that. And for so many years, that's what I did. And so
Hmm.
now it's like people like him have inspired me to be like, I don't, I no longer want to build it. I want to figure out how to build it.
There you go.
And so it's obviously getting like Brian's one of my best friends. And so I'm constantly inspired by him, but the people that are sort of around him and in the community, the same community you've been a big part of for a while, it's just uh, people like Jesper's whole team, seeing stuff like normal scrolling and animation getting pushed to a level that makes just
Mm.
people go like, how did that even happen? How did that even happen? I have this like itch to build things that make people say, how is that even happening?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a good group of people to put myself around. I'm now very blessed, very much because of Brian, but very blessed to sort of be around people like them and yourself that just wake up excited again to like get in front of the computer and try to learn something new every day, and
Definitely.
find ways to implement it for my clients. So, but yeah, Kelly's a big one, man. He's juggling being a new dad, which I'm about to do, and being a sick talent. And I highly respect that.
I think that you've done like a pretty incredible job of kind of pivoting from y'all. And I know in our previous chat that we had offline that you had mentioned that there was some kind of non-competes with y'all that kind of inspired you to write your
Yeah.
book. But I mean, writing is not easy for a lot of people and doesn't come naturally. So, did writing kind of always have a home in your life as a kid, or just kind of grew into it in the business world, having kind of write every day to some degree?
Never really had writing in my life at all. I actually read like 4 books in my life, probably. But I've always had this insane respect for like super unique headlines. I'll always go like show them to my wife or something. So I've always had a love for like really clever copy. But we started the company and you have to like divide the hats. It's like who's doing
Mhm.
IT, who's doing finance, and um, getting our like company and our values that we had set in place out into the world was just one of the hats that I took on. So I think over the course of a few years, I would had the responsibility of writing a bunch of posts that I had not done before. And I know I mentioned this earlier. I'm very blessed that my wife ran an editorial department for most of her
Mhm.
career. And for anyone that hasn't worked in advertising listening probably thinks that's something different, but in the advertising world, that's someone who is running a team of proofreaders and fact checkers and making sure you spell things and say things properly. And so uh, ever since I first met her and she was correcting my text messages, um, to sorry, babe, to getting her to look at some of the posts that I'm writing to make sure they've got like the right tone and the right feel to them. So I think that slowly molded my ability to write. And she was very good about pushing me down the path of writing the way I conversate versus just trying to like write formally, just like
Mm-hmm.
get it all down and refine it and make it sound like you're talking to people. And then at y'all, we had a few amazing copywriters. I think that also slowly kind of helped me mold. So after a few years, I feel like my posts were feeling like really good storytelling. And so, um, my book's full of a bunch of stuff that I had sort of written over the course of years about, nothing saved or formally, but in little posts and stuff, because it was all driven by the values that we were trying to put forth in the business. And so, yeah, when I left the company, it was just like a agreement to not do work that was competitive or promoting, and even more so the first few months after leaving a company that your name was very much tied to. It's really just that there's like a respectful backup as well. Like I'm gonna limit how much I post, limit how much I say, try not to draw attention to myself, let them get their footing. And so it's like, what can I do? It's a digital agency only with a bunch of developers. Like, what can I really do and keep momentum in the public's eye without being super competitive? And so I'd never worked on anything print in my life. So I was like, you know what? That's definitely not competitive.
Yeah, far from
And,
it. You switch
and
mediums entirely.
yeah, exactly, man. But I think I'd built up a following of people who wanted to hear me talk about those topics at y'all. And so when I left, it was like a easy, like, I'll just keep talking about this, but less in a company sense and more just a we should be doing right sense. And so I don't know at what point a few weeks after I left, I decided to just try to get something rough down and then show it to people like my wife and a few other friends in the industry and just be like, is this even something that's going in the right direction? And they responded really well to it. And so I tried to find ways to plan out, how can this be funny? How can this have really cool art? How can I ultimately turn this to a digital piece, which it would only make sense if I did that, because that's really my life is building those. So just put together a big plan to pull it off, reach out to a few connections that I had, a great illustrator, and then, Brian and Jesper, obviously, for the digital part. And then, yeah, man, just 3 months, just sort of just focused solely on writing. And then Christina edited the whole damn thing. And so I didn't have to pay for that either. So that helped.
I would say that we are lucky and blessed to have women in our lives that can help us write.
Absolutely.
My
Absolutely.
my wife just looks through my stuff and just yells at me for every comma I don't use to try to get me to learn how to write in the English language.
Yeah, man. And what's funny is like I developed this like conversational writing form, but that doesn't exactly work in a book one for one. And so it would have been an utter mess if I didn't have someone to actually turn it from a bunch of really good stories into like a cohesive thing that sort of flowed together. So yeah, very, very blessed. And then, one of my old writing friends who still works at y'all, I had her look at a few things because she's from Mississippi, so has a very like funny Southern sort of feel to her. So ran it by some different eyes and just refined it until it was ready. And the beauty of Amazon is what people think publishing a book is not really that anymore. Like I think people assume publishing a book is this expensive, laborious process where you've got to determine how many you're going to sell, and if you can put together the mechanical file for them to print from, if you can actually write the book, get the art in, and put it in a form, you don't spend any money. Amazon lets you they literally hold your hand through this process of uploading it. They're amazing algorithms and systems put in place, like tell you if things are wrong or if it's not enough pages to have the spine on the side. Like it literally just did everything until it approved it. And then once it approves it, it just goes up online and they print on demand. And so I didn't even really have to invest in having anything printed. It's just I can't imagine what it's like for someone like me to want to write a book years and years back, but now it's just super simple. If anyone listening has the ability to write and do some art and throw it together, it's do it. The tools at disposal right now just allow us to get stuff into the market and test it. And if no one buys it, who cares? You're not like buying 1,000 copies and then sitting with them in your closet anymore.
You're not going bankrupt in the process of trying to make.
Oh yeah. No, you're not going bankrupt in the process at all. No, look, I definitely took a little money and invested in having some people help me. I'm not an illustrator. I needed some really good art, but what it allowed me to do was still get my vision out, which I was just missing so much at y'all, as we had talked about. So it was nice to be able to, like, I don't know how to illustrate, but I can draw on a big whiteboard kind of what I see and then pass it to people who know how to turn that into really good stuff. And so that was a really good first step for me of like finding ways to get my vision down for others, but still just being sort of on my own and passing work over to them. And there was no timeline on it. There was no client down our throat. It was just it was nice to it just felt like a fun, goofy project that
Mhm.
ultimately did pretty good and it sold around 1,000 copies or so. And it's definitely exposed me to some new people, and I've got a few speaking gigs from it. So it did way more than I thought it would, man. Like to me, for that, at least my topic, a success would just be like to hear that a few agencies were shifting their processes a little from reading the book. It gave them a good idea of how to treat people a little better. So like I've heard that from a few places, and so that to me was the real measure of success. But in like literal terms, it did pretty good as well. So it was super nice.
3 months to write 160 plus pages. Can you take me through what the hell your kind of day looks like? When did you start? Did you just write straight? Did you do a couple hours and then like go to the gym? What was your process?
I left y'all in early September. I was probably writing by October, and then wrote for about 4 hours a day for about a month to get it to a place where I felt okay to show
Mm.
Christina and some other people of just like, this is a mess, probably 50 pages in book format. And then sort of let some people sit on it over the course of the holidays, where I just started working on my personal portfolio. I put it aside for a second and just gave people like November and December to sort of sit with it and digest it. And then we launched my portfolio early January, I feel like. And so like
Mm.
right after that, I picked it back up. And then yes, 6, 7, 8 hours a day of a mix of writing it and sort of PMing it, like getting
Mhm.
the illustrations. Um, that was like a job in itself. I would say I was spending an hour or so a day just sort of managing that, because I had this big idea in my head of creating one large scene that within it had different scenes that applied to every single chapter. So like I almost had to get all the chapters in place and then back those out and find ways to fit them in this sort of larger illustrative scene of the workday for somebody. So
Mhm.
I would say, yeah, I was spending 6 or 7 hours a day either writing or sort of connecting and ushering through the art. And then so did that for another, I would say like 2 months or so. And then still had to fit in work, like freelance work that was coming in. So those, it's funny, I left the long hours to go back to long hours, but I understood putting them in early would set me up properly later. So, yes, another few months doing that, and then sort of towards the end of it, I shifted that to where like half of my time was spent understanding the publishing process
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of learning about that whole new. I knew nothing about book publishing or book promotion and all the rules of like your first 30 days and on Amazon determine everything. Like whether your book's seen forever or not is all determined in this small window. So I was
Wow.
trying to plan proper promotions to make sure that that first month was like really heavy and powerful. Also recorded the audiobook during that time period. And
Mm.
so it was, uh, I would have never even thought written the work that goes into that. I was just always think like, oh, they got a book and then they read it into a microphone. But you have to have it re-edited because if you when you're talking to somebody in the book, you're in a book setting, and so the word look is here in an audiobook setting. So there's like this whole editing process of just getting it ready for me to sit in front of a microphone for a few hours. And that I had never done before either. So it was a lot of learning, man. And yeah, I would say 6, 7, 8 hours a day for multiple months for sure.
Where did the Where's Waldo cover concept come from? Anyone who is on the visual, they can check it out. But if not, just go and buy the book so you can see these really cool illustrations yourselves. But I'm curious about that.
I did some research on the types, just finding types of art that allowed you to tell a lot of stories in a lot of settings in a very small environment.
Mm,
Wimel Bilderbuck is the style of illustration. It's a pretty wild word, but um, yeah, man, it's just I needed to tell a lot of individual stories about all the crappy things that happen to people during their workday. But I wanted
mhm.
the cover to sort of encompass all of them, and books are small. And so I just kept coming back to that style of art. And then I just started looking through my network for people who did art in that manner and found one guy named Aaron Yao, lives far away in Singapore. And
Mm.
I once I landed on his Behance, I instantly was like, "Yep, this kid knows how to tell lots of stories in one little small space." And then I just kept digging through his work, and it was just like, "Oh my God, this is perfect.
Mm.
It's the only way I could really see that happening, where I could then also take those pieces of art out and individually pull them through the book whenever I'm talking about one of those little segments." And so yeah, it just became very clear that that style of art was the way to go. And then part two was finding someone who could actually pull it off. That then said, "Yeah, I love this idea." Was kind of going through similar stuff. It's funny, we think that's probably an American problem, like the crazy overwork, and I'm sure it partially is, but
Mhm.
overseas, some of the same like bad human treatment in the workplace stuff was happening. So I wrote him, he connected with him, and then we connected individually, and he's just been such an unbelievable partner in helping pull it to life. And man, I was convinced there would be a lot of translating Southern David and his ideas for this book, just like language barrier and
Mhm.
cultural barrier. But he was put in my life for a reason. I feel like I told him what I was thinking, and everything that I would get back was just like, "Oh my gosh, you get this!" Like that, there was a scene I wanted to over dramatize the way we overwork and watch people's hours and monitor everything they're doing in the workplace. And so it's like I would like one of the floors of this building to be people asleep at their desks, a boss yelling at someone, but I wanted cameras all over the place, like people are being monitored. And so he sent back the first comp, and it had like someone had spray painted like "time is money" on the wall. And I did not ask for that. But I
Uh,
saw that and I was like, okay, this person gets it. This is hilarious. And I don't know if I really had any revisions throughout the whole process. He was just like spot on, and it all just sort of fell in place.
That's amazing. I was gonna ask what the like kind of like the collaborative process and if there was a lot of hand holding through this kind of creation of the illustrations for the book and ultimately the websites. But
Yeah. There was a little, I mean, my business partner I started y'all with was the team he led before we started the agency was it was called Imaging at a large agency, but it was like illustration, medical illustration, CGI, 3D. Like he was over all of that. And so I definitely had a little exposure to someone who led illustration. And so
mm,
I knew a little. And then I was just like very blunt with Aaron when I met him. I'm like, here's a like 6 foot tall mural I did with whiteboard markers of
mm,
what I think it should be like a business area up top and a park over here. And I kind of had numbered a bunch of stuff, but it was like
mm,
stickmen. And so I mean, I gave him that and a pretty good write-up and was just like, I don't really understand the process or anything. And so he was very good about, I'll first give you this type of sketch, then I'll give you this type of line art, and then I'll give you this type of fake coloring. And so he
hmm.
sort of he had a process and I just let him roll with it because that was how I was going to learn it. He was wonderful.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it came out beautiful. It's a
Yeah,
ton
thank
of
you.
fun to kind of look at. I mean, everything from like the bandstand to the balloons flying around, it all matters to the core of the book and the stories inside of it. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a home run. I think it's gorgeous and fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. Is you know, you see things in your head a certain way and you just kind of hope that they actually come out that way. And I could not be more pleased. And I like to say I had nothing to do with it. I obviously wrote it and had stuff to do with it, but it just so many home runs from the talent that kind of helped me achieve it all that I thought would be a lot more laborious and tough. And they, you know, often are in an agency setting, which is why I thought that, because there's stakeholders and there's clients and there's
Mhm.
deadlines and there's so many things that complicate it that I think had been trained that it can be complicated. And when the barriers are off and it's not a client project and there's no deadline driving it, it just everyone's relaxed and has fun doing the work. And circling back to the very first thing we basically said on this call, man, is if like everyone on the team is talented and having fun doing a
Mhm.
project, it's just it's just going to be unreal work at the end.
That's the secret. Have fun while you're making it, and it'll be a good product.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, you, and it's hard to always do. Like an
Mhm.
energy company reaches out to you and they have a really good mission and a good brand, and you take on the project. It's it's not going to be goofy, relaxed, fun all the time. Like there's some serious topics going on, or there's some client deadlines that will happen. So not everything can be that way. And in that case, as a manager or a leader of work, a leader of humans, you just have to find different ways to make sure your team is happy and energized during the process, because not everything's going to be just like, wow, this is the most fun thing I've ever worked on in my life. So you do have to find different ways. But yeah, man, when there's no client involved and no deadline involved, it's the life for sure. It's just it can't always be that way, clearly.
You seem to really love creating projects from the ground up.
Yeah,
That so I was curious if that was something that you were just going to continue to do, or what the general plan for you is.
yeah. I call it being a project catalyst, and
Mm.
I think not trying to rhyme on purpose, but I think being a visual strategist and a project catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
If I if I can continue to do that, that's what I would probably prefer to do for the rest of my life. Is whether it's taking a client's need and coming up with an idea to solve it, or coming up with an idea myself that could be a great product or do good in the world. It's you know I understand from front to back how projects are done, and so it's playing a little producer and finding the right talent to help me, and it's almost contributing a little to the freelance and solopreneur community, employing people like that versus agencies to help me do the work. And then,
Mhm.
so I would say that that is the goal. Like once I'm back from paternity leave, is to try to amp that up and take more in, and maybe do. And right now I'm working with 2 or 3 people at a time, maybe work with 5 or 6 at a time and just shell out a little more work. But yeah,
Mm.
man, it is just trying to be the catalyst for good work. And sometimes that is me doing everything, and sometimes that is me doing very little, but I have to be doing something. And I think that's the
Yeah.
key with my future goal is, even if I'm just playing like strategy and UX on a project, I want to be involved in its direction from the start, and I want to be involved in its promotion at the end. And
Mm.
then whatever happens in the middle of that happens. I'll assemble the most fun, badass crew that I can to help me pull it off. And um, a lot of times that's in the design and dev area, even though I enjoy doing both of those myself. That is, it's where I know some really, really awesome talent and really great people that do it. And so I'll just probably continue to do that, man. Try to solve clients' problems in a way that's not just good for them, but like jaw dropping, and really trying to push. I love the web, so really trying to push like what can be done in a browser. Yeah, that's probably my future for a while, is breaking the browser.
We've been going for a little over an hour and 30. I don't know how much time you have left, but I wanted to take you through some furious fast questions
Yeah,
here.
let's do it. Let's do it. That's
I
fun.
I know that you have a crazy morning kind of routine and you're up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So what gets you going in the morning? Is it coffee, tea, pure adrenaline? How do you get up at 4?
Man, pure habit. How did I used to? I think a lot of coffee and the adrenaline of uh I just love really cool web work, man.
Mm,
And I have for so long that I just like can't wait to get up and try to build new things. And I felt like that for a while. And then um I just early on, maybe because my brother was in the military, maybe it just accidentally happened. But I feel like 20 years ago, I was waking up 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
mm,
I'm going to be the first at the office while people are still sleeping. I'm
mhm,
going to be getting ahead of them. I think there was some of that initially. And then over
mhm,
time, it just sort of developed into a habit. And I don't need an alarm clock. And then as I started getting older and older and like approached 40, I feel like the old man in me started to settle in. And I just started getting up earlier and earlier and enjoying quiet time a
mm.
little more and more. And so now I get up at 4 every day. I don't use an alarm. I wake up, I grab some coffee, and I'm excited to get going. And I think I'm really energized by not having anyone bothering me. And
Yeah.
anyone I work with during the day that's listening to this, you do not bother me. But some days, 8, 9 o'clock happens. I start getting some emails. Life starts happening, and then
Mhm.
I'll go 4 or 5, 6 hours without working on a project that I want to work on. So I think I'm very energized by the like 4 to 7:30 time range where the wife's asleep, Earth's asleep,
Mhm.
the West Coast is just going to bed for the most part. And
Mhm.
I know I mentioned I work with a lot of overseas talent, like Jesper's in Sweden, Brian's in Germany, Kelly's in New Zealand. So it actually also puts me a little more in their world.
Mm.
So yeah, getting to partner with those people and have some quiet time is, I think, what really probably drives me. But I do need coffee in the morning.
Yeah, right on. That kind of early, it depends on which type of person you are, but that either early time or that late time where no one is working
So
is
awesome.
like, oh, it's magical. No distractions, no email.
Absolutely. And now that I'm like an old married man, it's more okay to, you don't get as much crap from people going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So I do have to account for that on the other end to actually pull it off and
Mhm.
not be a zombie. But it's hard to do, man. When you're in your 20s and 30s, it's hard to be the guy going to bed at 9 o'clock every night. You're gonna have no social life whatsoever. So luckily, I'm past that now, and I can actually not be sleep deprived
Mm.
in the process. So I just go to bed early and wake early. I still get the same amount of sleep, I think, now that most people who aren't sleep deprived get. I
Yeah.
just I just give up a little of my night to do so.
What would you say great creative work looks like to you?
I'm gonna resort back to it puts a smile on your face. Like I try to think of not creative industries and somebody who gets into, let's say, vehicles, like fixing
Mm.
up vehicles. A, a vehicle drives by that's just like so well done from top to bottom. You look at that person, it's just like, ah, like wow, look at that. Like that smile it puts on people's face. It's like
Mhm.
that to me is the mere vision of what good work looks like. And for everybody, that's different. For me, it's very specifically, it's the way a web property loads, the way it
Mm.
feels as you scroll, the reactions that the interface gives you when you interact with them, the sort of little moments of wow that you're given through your experience, like that. It's less to me about how work looks and more about how it acts and sort of talks to you and the way it reacts. And so that for me specifically, that is what good work is. But I'm sure if you could film me during it, you would know when I was looking at good work because I'm smiling. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. What are you doing outside of work to kind of keep yourself fueled up and happy and smiling?
I don't have currently any like golf type hobbies, though I do
Mhm.
love some golf. What I have been doing earlier pre knocking on the door of having a child is going to like conferences, like the awards conference was really cool. Just I do some speaking events. So
Mm.
I try to get out of the house and still involve my career somehow, and speaking has definitely been a really good way for me to do that. But then a lot of it is just like going into a different room and watching some tutorials and trying to move things from digital to paper, which I haven't done before, and really just trying to push myself in those areas. I'm very much a homebody, though. I'd like to be at home or in my yard.
Mm.
We bought a house 2 years ago, and there's a nice deck overlooking some woods, and so I like to spend a lot of time out there and just sort of find my creative space in my head. But we just yesterday entered the third trimester, so what I do on my off time has completely shifted
Yep.
to uh, putting together a nursery and reading,
Mhm.
listening to audiobooks because I don't really like to read. Funny,
Yeah.
wrote a book, but listening, trying to prepare myself to be a father.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm up to now, all
That's
the
a
time.
big enough challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a life transformational thing. So I
But
hear
even
you.
that keeps me feeling creative because I'm like building dressers and building
Mm.
cribs, and I do like to get my hands dirty in different ways of creation. So I'm still finding some type of outlets there, but it's very responsibility driven at this point.
Definitely. What is the what's the best album and or book and or kind of movie that you've seen recently or listened to?
Oh man, that is a good one. Best album. I'm sure a lot of people probably think I listen to Eminem and stuff all the time. But Lana Del Rey, there's something about her music that puts me in a really good spot. And so
Mm.
Kim Trails Over the Country Club is her most recent album. We listen to her a lot in this house. I definitely can't let go of some of the old stuff. I like Counting Crows way too much in my life still.
Mhm.
Oasis probably way too much in my life still. But at the moment, I would say that album of hers is probably my favorite. Um, when it comes to books, I just I really don't read them.
Well, you got the audiobook. We
But
could skip.
but I will say that Gary Vee's new book, I have a problem stomaching a lot of what he does in a live setting because it's very brash. But
Mm.
his his most recent book. It's like 12 something. I don't even know the name of it. It's very, it teaches you a lot about how to handle some really important business situations, and he's got a good heart. So I would say
Mm.
that. And then, I know it's a funny response, but I don't watch movies.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah, I don't. I just haven't for. I'm not a TV guy.
mhm.
I watch a lot of sports, and if it's not that, I just don't. I just don't really get into a lot of TV, and I'm not really
Yeah.
sure why. I haven't for a really long time.
No, I'm not too big on TV either. What I do is I'll watch YouTube videos about cooking. So like I love being in the kitchen. That's like my happiest place. So I'll just like put on like cooking videos. And that's
Oh, so my wife loves TV, so I definitely am put in a situation to watch stuff. But that is the type of stuff I will sit around for. Like we just finished a show called Pressure Cooker, which is kind of
Mm,
like Survivor, but in the kitchen. And yeah, man, I'd love to cook myself. I don't like cooking short meals. Like she handles most of our like short meals during the week. When I get in the kitchen, I like to be in there for a few hours. So I
yeah.
feel you on that. But yeah, it's YouTube. I'll lean into YouTube for hours on that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely an incredible place for learning in general if you use it properly for good.
Man, yeah, if you're a visual learner, like uh, I feel like that is how I've learned everything in my life. That if a piece of code doesn't work, I go straight to
Mhm.
YouTube. Like it's everything.
Living or dead, is there a person that you would want to have lunch with to pick their brain?
I feel very hollow right now, not having not having an answer to that. Old Steve Jobs.
Mm,
I don't think I would have wanted to work with him. He's completely anti my approach of treating people right to
yeah.
get the best result. But there's always an urge inside of me to be a little visionary,
Mm,
and in my own space, which is more either the web or like unique ways to treat people better. So it's a different type of space, but there's got to be some type of approach
mhm.
to looking forward like that. There's got to be some types of methods that really, it's not like he's just some Nostradamus guy that would wake up and be like, the world's going to move to this. It's like, surely there's a process of following trends or following what's happening. So I would probably love to sit down with him and just kind of understand his approach to being a visionary in his own
Mm,
space. Uh, I can't imagine if he would have also treated people well, the type of impact he would have had.
yeah.
But yeah, I think we all want to be the first or be at the forefront. And so, yeah, I'm also that person. I really have a drive to do things that people haven't seen before, and
Mhm.
that's one thing he mastered.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good example. And literally, I don't have an answer to the question I just asked.
Dang it, I was about
Yeah.
to ask you about, you know
Let,
what? I felt uncomfortable, so I'm going to do it back
fuck,
to you.
fuck it.
Britain,
Let's do it.
living or dead,
All right. All right.
who
Um,
would you love one interview with?
he might not want to talk to me, but that's fine. Um, I would say Miles Davis. Just insanely incredible musician.
Mhm.
Changed the face of jazz like six, five times, something like that. So
Yeah,
cool jazz. And then like there's like when he introduced jazz fusion, but there's like a couple other times where he like innovated jazz completely from the ground up.
I
So
love it.
I'm a big jazz fan. I know I put out a lot of Jam of the Weeks and it's a lot of like hip hop, but if you listen to like a lot of those hip hop songs,
Very
it's
jazz.
so rooted in just like jazz and blues. And I that's the music that I love the most is anything that comes from that root. And just the incredible musicianship and the improvisation.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say if there was like a characteristic of Rogue's style, it's flow. Everything I think about in terms of the flow and the movement and how it all connects
Yeah.
So like moving down the page, like how do they connect together? How does it move your eye from left to right? And I think a lot of people don't think about moving the eye, and maybe that's like something you learn in art school or if you're a very visual person, but it needs to bebop and scoot around the page so you're digesting everything.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
still needs to be room for discovery. And I love those moments of weird discovery. Like playing with your website sites in general is just so fun for because there's so much discovery.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
buttons all animate, they have such a personality and a life to them. It's very, very beautiful and choreographed in a way where it
Yeah.
has like a ton of life and character within everything.
Well, man, just like jazz, the key to that is it's not all, you got to find a good mix of like abstract and random and choreographed all at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
you still have to sort of wow and inspire people randomly. And so I think it's just finding a really good mix of that is like, how can you put on a show for people while also shocking them
Mm-hmm.
from something they came to expect and something they came not to expect. And it's hard to do, and jazz is very much that way. I mean, it's very heavy down in the South, especially closer to New Orleans.
Mm.
And those people will just like stop their song and start jamming randomly for 20, 30 minutes, and you don't ever feel like that's not what I came here to see. It's because it's a great flow between this is what you came here to see and surprise this isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I feel like y'all do that great in your work, and I try to with the people I partner with, I feel like we all sort of have that same feeling of just how can we give the user what they came for and have them leaving shocked also. It's a fun balance.
Yeah. Last question for you, David. How much do you hate the Yankees?
I love watching them right now. I'm probably really gonna make some not friends saying this, but there is nothing more beautiful in life than watching them be a dumpster fire. They I have lots of friends who are Yankees fans, and my wife's diehard Mets fan. It's a beautiful thing being a game or two ahead of them in the division when we were supposed to suck, and I
Yeah.
had already uh, felt okay. So we're like overachieving, and they're obviously doing Yankee thing. I'm pretty sure they've underachieved mostly for the like last 2 decades or so, while Boston sports over the last 2 decades has had their greatest time ever. So
Yeah.
I don't hate Yankee fans. I would just hate to be one.
They used to be the king, but not anymore. So
Yeah,
we'll
it's
take it.
there's only so long you can talk about total championships when
Mm.
you're in a long drought of your own.
Mm-hmm.
So they could lean on that. I can't hear that anymore. You gotta. What have you done for me lately, Yankees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Is so in terms of basketball, are you all Boston sports or do you have a couple of teams that you like and depending on the sport?
So I lived in Chicago and I lived in San Francisco, and so I do root for those teams whenever they are not playing my team. And so
Yeah.
I'm very Boston hardcore uh, down to everything except college sports because
Mm.
Boston college sports is kind of eh.
Yeah.
And I went to LSU, and so I do have some ties there, but. Um, yeah, I root for Golden State Warriors, San Francisco 49ers if they're not playing the Patriots or the
Mhm.
Celtics, and I kind of do the same for Chicago sports just because I try to give some loyalty to the places that I've been.
Mhm.
Still pull for the Saints, but if they're playing the Patriots, screw the Saints. Um, but I was raised that way, and so I
Yeah.
just couldn't break it. Even if Patriots were playing the Saints and I'm living in Louisiana as an 8-year old, I
Mhm.
better not go for the Saints. And so that I carried that with me to now. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I do pull for those teams when they're not playing my own though. I'm I'm very big into sports and I'm not much of a fan. I do root for specific teams, but I'm more of a fan of good. Like
Mm,
I want to see the Wimbledon final. I don't care who's in it. I
yeah.
want to see the Masters final. I don't care who's in it. I like seeing the best there
Yeah.
is at it. And so I think that transcends my love for specific teams at this point in my life more
Definitely.
than it used to. Yeah.
Incredible.
Luckily, Tom Brady was on the Patriots, so I got to watch both at the same time when it came
Yep.
to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But now, like, I have no ties to Kansas City, and if for the most part hated them, but watching someone like Patrick Mahomes operate, I'll just like spend a lot of time watching him, even though I don't go for them. It's nice watching people who do it the best do it at the best.
Yeah. There's an artistry to it. That's the thing. It's
Absolutely,
such finesse. Yeah.
that, especially that guy, like the bringing back. It's like Bob Cousy of football or something. It's like bringing back the no look passes and stuff like that. It's uh, there's that seeing people be great at their craft is one thing, but seeing people kind of have some like flair and creativity
Mhm.
while they do it against other people who are doing it at a high level, like that's beautiful to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Our little community that we found ourselves in, man, I think that's one of the things that inspires me most about it and wakes me up every day is the bet like at web stuff, for example, the best there are to do it. We're kind of in their midst now. And it's
Mm.
uh seeing some of the work that comes out is just like, oh man. So I feel like we're around some Patrick Mahomes type
Mhm.
people in our industry, and just getting a little closer to them than I was before is just like, oh wow, like front row seat. This I can't wait to get up tomorrow and try to figure out how the heck they did that. And so I think circling this all back, I think we're both very inspired by the people who do it best, and
Yeah.
it's nice being around them in our own industry.
It absolutely is. And the most incredible feeling is just like pinging them on social and like giving them a compliment, and then just like when they respond back, or even better, like, oh yeah, your work's dope. Like,
Oh yeah, dude, the way we connected, man, like just same thing, man. Like, oh, you respect someone's work. It's like say that, hey, that's nice, and it turns into a conversation and
Mhm.
a friendship. So it like I grew up hearing closed mouth don't get fed.
So
And
true.
I look at it that way in the work that we do and just in networking in general. It's just like you have no idea who's going to write back or who
Yeah.
you're actually going to click with and have a connection with. And so just do it. And worst that can happen is there's silence. It's like move on.
The book is The Search for Work Happiness, helping leaders keep themselves and their people happy and mentally healthy. It is an incredible book. I'm not blowing smoke. It actually has impacted a lot of systems and thought process at Rogue around workplace culture. So go out and get this on Amazon. David, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online?
It's hard to spell, so I'll spell it, but it's davidlubofsky.com. That's DAVIDLUBOFSKY.com is my personal portfolio. And the books, The Search for Work Happiness, but the web address is findworkhappiness.com. And so you can check those two things out there. I'm all over LinkedIn, and yeah, man, I appreciate the airtime for that, and just like you initially connecting with me in the first place. I always respected what y'all do, so it's great to have continued conversating and to be part of this podcast, man. Again, I can't wait to see what happens next with it.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited that you could be a part of it and agreed to
We're
this.
honored.
And yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for being a guinea pig here with me. And
Oh man,
we'll see where it goes.
my honor, man. Thank you very much.
To everyone out there, be kind, reflect, and unwind. Let's make the world a little bit better and more creative. So thank you for your time. Everything will be in the show notes. David, thank you again.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
man. Yeah, appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, brother.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, see you.
Cheers.